Oh boy. This one's gonna be a bit of a doozy, and I might as well just jump right in. So, this is gonna be about memetic ideas, and it might require a bit of romantic thinking. And by romantic thinking, I mean the ability to kind of acknowledge something that isn't quite as explicitly knowable. So, I think on how to start these things, and I think that the most interesting and prescient way of starting this is to say that the memetic idea, or memes in general, if you think of a meme, what comes to mind? You might think of silly little internet macros, or a some vague, like, oh gosh, Icon has cheeseburger. Like, you might think of turns of phrase or little internet images, but I want you to think of memes more as the literal definition of a meme, which is an idea that is a sort of living idea that is communicated between people. And once something becomes memetic, it's something that reproduces, in a sense, by that person communicating it on. And when you think of memetic ideas, you might just think of, stuff I see online, but you need to think further. Advertising is essentially a meme. When you think of that popular jingle for a brand or a product or a fast food chain or a slogan, those are all memes. But furthermore, you can extrapolate memes into many things. Superstition and folklore are kind of memes. If you think about, why not, if you step on a crack, you'll break your mother's back when walking through a road or pavement that contains a lot of cracks or splits. And these memetic ideas, I need to give a brief rundown of implicit versus explicit knowledge. Implicit knowledge is something that you learn indirectly, where it's not literally given reason. You'll implicitly learn that the stove is hot by feeling heat radiate from it and know not to touch it. That's an implicitly learned thing. To be explicitly told something is to say, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And you might go, that invites some skepticism, but when you're explicitly told something, you have reason to believe it. Or you can explicitly learn things through other means, but that's just a very basic rundown of what implicit and explicit knowledge are. Religion as a product contains a lot of implicitly learnt things that have been conveyed through explicit meaning without the connections being quite scientific. When you think of religion's origin, a lot of the earliest scholars, because they could only convey their writing or ideas through a religious aspect, the religious aspects become explicitly conveyed, but the ideas that they implicitly learnt, they don't quite understand. Now, looking back to step on a crack and break your mother's back, that's a meme created through an implicit idea that stepping on a crack in a pavement is bad because it will break your mother's back. But if you romanticize that a bit, you can sort of come to the understanding that the reason why this rhyme might have been invented is to prevent people from stepping on roads that aren't quite well made. Let's say you step on a crack and suddenly the pavement gives way and you hurt yourself. That's sort of the idea with these memes. Let's take another one. In the Bible, it says, "You shall not mix cloth. Having mixed fabrics is bad." I don't know the explicit verse, forgive me. But that might have come about through the implicit knowledge of when you mix fabrics like that, it'll create weaker clothing. Simply by bonding two different types of fabric, you'll create weaker stitches and your clothes might give away. Now, thinking things further through that, the reason why a lot of religion might discourage hypersexual practice is because back before people knew what STDs really were, or sexually transmitted anything, they would consider it a curse. This person has been cursed with lumps on their skin and disfigurement and weariness and foul stench. That's an implicitly learnt belief that something is bad, conveyed through explicit means in a way that doesn't quite hold true. And now that with scientific advancements, we know that the same reason why in the past we knew that, well, we understood bacteria as tiny demons that ate at us, or plaque on your teeth was understood as tiny demons for a bit. When you think about things like that and you further extrapolate that into religion, the religious memes that we might see, let's look at 666. Now, 666 is the mark of the beast, or the number of the beast, but people think that that's a really spooky number. But if you look at that number's sort of gematria meaning, the meaning becomes clear. The reason why it says none shall trade without the mark of the beast becomes obvious when you look at the potential origin of the number. And 666 in gematria meaning is the number of Emperor Claudius Nero, who persecuted Christians. So in the Bible, when they wrote none shall trade without the mark of the beast, they mean the mark of the Roman Empire and all of that stuff relating to empire and that system of government. And so you can kind of see these things. It's the same reason as the Bible expresses a black star of Satan. This is why So I'm about to destroy a conspiracy theory. People believe this black cube of Saturn type of thing. This all stems from early Mesopotamian astrology. They revered Saturn as a king god, and early biblical people wrote into the Bible that Saturn was an evil demon planet because they reviled the other religion, because it was a sense of control. And when you look at that, it's now thousands of years later, and people believe in these conspiracy theories that stem from tribalism thousands of years old, and that's a memetic idea that's been carried forth. You can look at everything and understand it as a memetic idea. The reason why we consider a house to have a door and four walls and basic amenities is the product of memes. Anything you can look at like that and deconstruct it as the product of memes. But we can't really, once you get into that point where you're speculating, well, everything can be deconstructed, everything in this whole world can be deconstructed into some memetic idea that has been conveyed through implicit and explicit teachings throughout time. This is why, if you contextualize truth in a certain way, you can turn a memetic idea into dogma. There's a common meme that goes around about transphobes. They say you should join the 41%. When you look at that, you need to understand that the paper that they're citing, the research, one, isn't entirely accurate, but two, 41% of transgender people who responded to that survey said that they had, at one point or any point in their entire life, thought of suicidal ideation. And that could be a lot of people. A lot of people have had suicidal ideation in their entire life. The fact that some people might not be able to understand that is just, a product of privilege, but I digress. A lot of the reason why they might say they have had suicidal ideation often stems from social pressure. And they say that the social pressure exuded onto them makes them think that they'll never be accepted, and that drives them to suicide. And once you think about that, the truth of that survey saying that it's basically communicating an idea that says that we should treat those people better, and so they'll be less suicidal. That gets turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you have transphobes explicitly calling for that, they are pushing that onto you. They are quite literally saying they do not care about the origin of that, and they just want to use it as a weapon to abuse and bully people, typically through their own personal hang-ups. They're ashamed of parts of themselves, so they project it outward. When you think of memetic ideas like that, it's all about phrasing the truth and contextualizing the truth in certain ways. you can look at a lot of religious practice like this. The reason why a lot of sin all over the world, in all different religions, sin has sort of come to mean, in Buddhism, there are 3 sins: wrath, foolishness, and... oh gosh, it's a pig, a snake, and a rooster. It's wrath, foolishness, and I digress. Well, let's look at the 7 deadly sins. The reason why all of these sins kind of touch on the same subject is because they all cover one thing, which is selfishness. When you act in your own self-interest, you're not acting in the self-interest for the religion, humans as a whole, everything. True selfishness is sinful because it harms others. And that's why it's a sin and something to be admonished, and why sin has sort of memetically all come to be the same thing. They've abstracted the concept of selfishness into sin and virtue, and it's another way of demonizing people for selfish behavior, basically. It's a cudgel that people use, and that's why they ascribe sinfulness as to things they personally disagree with. It's why the label of sodomite can be thrown around so willy-nilly. It's because at that point, the memetic idea is just thing I don't like. It's the same as woke. You might as well be calling things sinful. When video games are woke, when this, that, and the other thing are woke, woke in its traditional, well, not traditional, in AAVE standards, woke was just a word to fill a meaning of an idea that wasn't quite explicitly expressed. It's basically just awareness to social issues, but because they don't want to phrase that as awareness to social issues, they'll just say woke. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to be aware. It's a good thing to be knowledgeable, and that's why academia and intelligentsia all tend to be unanimous on these woke ideas. It's because they're the product of being informed, and I'm not going to say truly unbiased, because what does that even mean? Everyone's biased. Everyone has personal bias. But the thing is the more you come to understand, the more you understand that this war is not typically a war about information. It's about people who would rather hold on to dogma and superstition and what they're told memetically, versus people who scrutinize and question and seek the truth. The reason why Australia is woker than the UK or the US is because we as a country have a larger atheist population, and being more culturally diverse unironically breeds more woke ideas because you're just exposed to more. It's why people who have had a very narrow life experience become very hateful and bigoted. They don't know, and these abstractions become sin. These things that they resent others for experiencing that they themselves didn't get to experience become shame, become all of these things. And it's crazy because you can sort of, once you understand memes, let's look at religion again. When you look at these examples of good and evil, what even is that? Well, when evil and sin is selfishness and good and altruism is selflessness, when you have a god in a religion that represents a certain body of virtues and a certain body of things that are good and causes we champion, these bodies end up being implicitly adopted by the worshippers and followers of these religions, and these implicitly adopted beliefs will be passively inflicted onto the world. Let's say a group of Christians become good Samaritans, they do the right thing, and in turn inspire people to do more of the right thing according to the religion. That can be internalized as their God winning. That's why religious power comes from worship. It's an implicit understanding of the memetic idea influencing people, and this memetic influence influencing the world as it's done. And it's through time and memes that religions hold their power, and why if you seek to deconstruct things, or even just questioning why is this, why is that, you'll come to these same conclusions I have. these forces of good and evil are just memetic ideas. They're quite literally memes produced by religions in order to get people to sway to their religion's creeds. That's why a lot of selflessness or altruism gets put into this memetic category of good. It's because you're acting in service of, one, the religion, and two, other people. And it's why a lot of these religions sort of cover these same tenets and why they create their same boogeymen. It's because when you create a boogeyman, you create people with a cause to be championed against. The same reason as to why King Arthur needed to create the Holy Grail, to channel might into finding this mythical object. That channeling of energy, one, prevents people from using that energy for their own selfish means, but two, it furthers your own personal goals. It's why church and state are sort of the same thing. It's the powerful using these things as memetic influence. Like the law itself is a bit of a meme. And when you look at these things being memes, it's how you can say that someone who superstitiously believes in a deity of justice that will punish people who are guilty no matter what, even if they don't confess to their crimes, might be closer to the truth than someone who believes that sinners are only punished when they're punished by the people. It's because when you internalize a crime or something that's memetically conveyed to you as sinful, it's you self-punish. Which it's kind of funny because you might look at two people who commit the same crime and they get wildly different sentences because of things like context and memes. If something's memeticized to be bad in one culture but memeticized to be good in another, it's why it's memetically considered fine for a healthcare CEO to kill thousands of people by denying them healthcare because there's enough obfuscation in the form of this magic. And when a righteous actor takes it upon themselves to put down that person who's killed hundreds of thousands of people indirectly, it's considered a crime worthy of sentence. When you look at these things, and once you convey that to enough people, a court of people might say that this person who's killed a healthcare CEO is innocent and righteous, and they might let him go. There's technically no such thing as within the system, there's no such thing as no conflict of interest because everyone's interest is to exist within the system. And when everything's existing within these systems, they self-reinforce memetically. It might seem like my ideas are a bit mumbled, but you sort of have to create. See, someone could say that these are delusions of reference, but I think the ideas are there. Basically, forgive me for not having these thoughts are easy to connect in my head, but when I vocalize them, I lack the language. And the thing is that language itself is a bit of a meme. The way that you might internalize a word like, I don't know, if someone has, if someone has the word value, imprinted on them as a child as being, if something is cheap in value, that's good. But if someone from a childhood age someone says, that's cheap, that's inferior because it's cheap. See how cheap as two different words has become, the idea of cheapness is both memetically good and memetically bad through the power of memes. It's why language itself is kind of poisoned in this way, that the words we use memetically in turn have this weight and this magic attached to them. You can deconstruct everything in this sort of regard, but I just think about things a lot, and when you think about things a lot, you kind of come to these conclusions. When you sort of realize that memes are kind of like this, and you see capital as a system, if someone makes a lot of money off of a meme, like a lot, enough to change their entire life, enough for them to have infinite free time to be able to pursue whatever they want, and people consider them divinely gifted because of that free time that they have at the behest of this meme that they capitalized off of, is that not a divine intervention? Is that not the same thing as a miracle because of how memetic forces come into play? Memetic forces that shape religion, memetic forces that shape our very ideas and our world itself. When you think about miracles like this, if you have a group of people you led through a desert for however long, and you find a passage and help them across, and all of these people swear by it that you parted the sea with your own hands, that's a meme. That religious idea has become a meme, and that meme becomes a fable that thousands of years later people might literally think you parted the sea. But in reality, you just acted in service of others, and they romanticized what you did to a degree where it memetically came to be. And when you look at language and miracles and all these sorts of things, you know, it might seem a bit blasphemous to say these things, but true religion exists outside of memes, and there might not... It's why, like, organized religion doesn't really exist. Everyone sort of has subjective internalization, interpretations of all these things. Morality itself is so subjective that organized religion just seeks to control people into conforming to giving donations to people, or, you know, it's why the Bible itself needs people or a leader of their religion to interpret it, because of how old these ideas are. The head, the powerful, they need to tell people how they should think, and when people are unenlightened to all of these things, how can they truly make judgment on anything? I want to end this video with what kind of got me thinking about memes. When I was a kid, I got really into the Metal Gear Solid series, and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance explicitly makes calls to memes being the DNA of the soul. And you can even see it in Metal Gear Solid 5, kinda. A lot of these ideas are sort of represented in Hideo Kojima's work and body of work as a whole. Even the idea of someone going to an island and then coming back having stopped a group of terrorists, what could have happened there is so subject to interpretation that when it's revealed that the events of Metal Gear Solid 1 are completely... the game you play is a simulation. When that's revealed, it makes sense why he calls it Shadow Moses Island, because quite literally this miracle that Solid Snake or David performs is another miracle. And, you know, I'd been thinking about that, how that is... If people said that Solid Snake single-handedly took down a Metal Gear, then he must have. And if that meant that he literally faced one-on-one against a giant robot, even though that's highly implausible, it's a video game. Maybe he did. And, you know, when you control the truth, it controls... It's magic. It's a form of magic. What people believe is a type of magic. And that's why, like, the devil is in the details, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to edit this a little bit. Thanks for watching.